right, we are live. So today, welcome to episode 6 of our series. I'm Brandy, and today we are diving into an exciting topic, the incredible versatility of oolitic aragonite and how Calcean is leading the charge in innovative and sustainable solutions. So today, it is my absolute pleasure to have Alyson Myers, Ph.D., you guys. He's also the VP of Business Development and Research at Calcean on the live stream today. So just to give you guys a little bit of background, Calcean is a sister company to Pisces USA and is dedicated to innovative solutions such as Oolitic Aragonite, which is one of the products we sell. It's a unique and sustainable natural resource. While our viewers might know aragonite from its aquarium applications, it also has a diverse use in agriculture, construction, and environmental restoration. The main reason I wanted to have Alyson on today is because oolitic aragonite is truly a unique substance for reef keepers and cichlid keepers, so freshwater and saltwater on this one. I thought the best way to cover the ins and outs is to have the expert on herself. We get a lot of questions specifically about the oolitic aragonite because of the way it looks, and Alyson's going to talk about that today and why it looks the way it does. We're exploring how Calcean is leveraging this incredible material to make waves across industries, across industries and lead the charge in sustainability. Thank you for joining us, Alyson. You ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, so my first question is just a little bit about Calcean. Can you share a little bit about your background and how you came to work with Calcean?
Sure. So my background is I got my PhD and my master's degree from FAU, where I studied marine mammal behavior and ecology and ethology. FAU's located in Boca Raton in Florida. So I spent most of my summers out to sea in the Bahamas, actually.
That sounds really fun.
Yeah, where I was born and raised. So I'm well familiar with these waters here, and that happens to be Oolitic Aragonite precipitates. Essentially during my PhD, I consulted on some various projects, including nutrient remediation studies using the aragonite to help clean up the waterways. So we actually won Stage 1, Phase 2 of the George Farley Water Prize for cleaning up the Everglades using aragonite. So that was a really fun project that I did alongside of my studies. Essentially, my father actually, he has the lease for the aragonite and harvesting, and he was really the impetus behind Calcean, and it was his brainchild. And so I helped him out with those projects during my PhD and during my studies. And then when I finished, I jumped on board full time to help him with it, and we grew it together with a great team in Gadsden and in Savannah to what it is today. He really delved into the science behind it, and so did I, and we explored the various industries that it could go into, because most of the time it was always just looked at as a typical calcium carbonate, but it's not. It's a very unique mineral. It has some really unique properties. Its morphology is different than your typical calcium carbonate. It's renewable. It's sustainable. Its characteristic shape is very unique. It doesn't come from a quarry. It's not mined in that way. It's a sandy-like material. So it's a very unique mineral, and we were really excited to explore it and find new industries that we could use it in.
That's great. I know when we talked the other day, I felt like I didn't need any questions because you were just so ready to go. You know this company and everything about it backwards and forwards. So I have a whole bunch of questions. I don't think we'll get to them all, but let's see. Can you tell us a little bit about Calcean? You may have already done that just now, but why did y'all start focusing on oolitic aragonite? Was it because of your PhD, or was that already something going on? What came first?
No, no. So, Calcean came first. So it was, my father's brainchild. He delved into the science behind it and looked into it, and started to see that it was a really truly unique material. It wasn't just any old calcium carbonate that you typically find from a mine. It is renewable. It was constantly precipitating. It's a well documented phenomenon how it precipitates and how it forms. So the location, the Bahamas is near Florida, right? So it makes it very ripe for study by Florida universities. So there's a lot of great peer-reviewed literature out there about the formation, how it serves as a carbon sink, and its characteristics, et cetera. So he delved into that and looked at it beyond it just being a calcium carbonate, and then I also looked into it as well, and that's when we decided, we expanded into a lot of different industries, including using it in aquariums and looking at its performance compared to your typical calcite or calcareous sands that you would use in an aquarium or in agriculture, and looking at seeing how it improves, the bioavailability of calcium, how it improves your yields in plants. So we've seen improved yields of like corn, soybeans, alfalfa, even almonds, and improved root health, and improved calcium levels in the soil. It has a great buffering capacity. So, similar to in aquarium tanks, right? It helps buffer the pH there. It'll help buffer the pH in soil too, or using it as a renewable and sustainable filler in bioplastics. So, merging it with starches to create biodegradable and compostable plastic products as well, using this mineral. And even right down to a play sand. The play sand that's sold on Home Depot that has also been going into indoor play centers because of its high purity, and it's soft to touch, right? So if you look at the grains, they're oolitic in nature, and oolitic directly translates to egg-shaped, right? So its namesake is based on its form, so based on what it looks like. I guess now it's time to kind of delve into how it forms. And
I was actually going to say, we have this up right now. I think this is like what actually inspired me to contact you, because we hadn't talked, even though our sister companies, like you and I have connected because of this. We had a distributor who was asking us the manufacturing process and how it ends up being this perfectly spherical shape. It's really round, and it looks like there's no way this happens in nature. Like when you see these perfect shapes, and we talk about this in aquascaping, like you try not to make things look perfect because that doesn't feel natural. So when people see these little beautiful egg-shaped grains of sand, and they're all about the same size, they're all about the same shape, they feel like it's not natural. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure, yeah, it almost looks like it's been put in a rock tumbler.
That's exactly, I get asked that all the time, if it has been tumbled or anything to make it so smooth.
Right, yeah. So I think we'll start from the beginning. So the way that it forms is that groups of blooms of cyanobacteria.
Do you have a slide about that? Sorry.
No, you can stay there. That's fine if you want.
All right.
Yeah. You can go to that one slide that has I forgot I put that little diagram on there that helps.
Further?
Further.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, so the way that it forms is that blooms of cyanobacteria will move from the deeper waters into the shallow waters of the Bahamas, on the banks of the Bahamas, and driven by photosynthesis. So the same thing, our plants do, right? It'll sequester carbon from the atmosphere, serving as a carbon sink, and through a mineralization process on the surface of that cyanobacteria, it will bind that carbon with whatever is rich in the water, which for us happens to be calcium, and precipitates a calcium carbonate. So it's taking that carbon from the atmosphere and the calcium from the water and merging it to mineralize and precipitate a calcium carbonate, or aragonite. And these aragonite needles will form concentric layers, and through suspension and resuspension events and turbidity on the seafloor, these, because the needles, aragonite is needle-like, right? So these needles will form these concentric, round layers, and all these needles will be sticking up, but it gets tumbled, right? Naturally tumbled, almost like a rock tumbler, and that's what smooths and polishes these ooids into these nice little unique little egg-shaped particles or grains. So that's how it's naturally formed. Yeah, it's a pretty unique process in how it's formed. It has a unique morphology, crystalline morphology. So, like I mentioned, it's needle-like, right?
I'll
So if
go
you
back
look
to
at it
that picture
under,
where it shows that.
yeah, if you look at it under SEM imagery, it looks like a lot of interlaced needles. It has what's called an orthorhombic crystalline morphology, versus your typical calcite, which is, mined from the earth and quarries or calcareous sand, has what's called a trigonal rhombohedral crystalline morphology. So aragonite will look like a lot of interlaced needles, and your calcite will look like building blocks. And when you look at those two side by side, you can see that they're different, but this also corresponds to a number of differences in surface area. So aragonite has over double the surface area of your typical calcium carbonate, has a high elemental calcium content. It's a very pure calcium carbonate. Your mined calcium carbonate will have various impurities based on the mine. So ours is a very pure calcium carbonate. Which actually lends itself well to various industries. So, like glass manufacturing, the high purity of the aragonite and low iron content will create a really high clarity glass, which is important for things like, perfume bottles or liquor bottles or anything where high clarity glass would be valuable. So it's, used well in that industry. That high surface area combined with that high elemental calcium content really lends itself well to, being a very bioavailable calcium for things like plants, or in your fish tank, corals and that sort of thing as well.
Jumping ahead a little bit, but
Mhm.
right here, I actually have a macroalgae tank. And the first time we talked, I was asking you about my macroalgae that's growing in there. So some of the algae in there are very difficult to grow in a fish tank, right? Like anywhere outside of the wild, it's really hard to grow. And part of that, one of the things that they've figured out is that if they grow it in coral skeleton, that it will actually duplicate, it'll have offspring and continue to grow. I got some macroalgae that are really rare and difficult to grow, and I was told I had to get some crushed coral to grow it in. I was like, yeah, I want to try our substrate. And within a couple of days, I started having little offspring pop up. And I sent the picture to the person who I brought the macroalgae from, who grows it, who breeds it. And she was like, I've never seen that. And I'm assuming, like, it's just, we can look at this slide and we can see the difference between the just the structure. It's just way more bioavailable calcium carbonate than what you would normally get with regular sand, right?
Correct. Yes, it is. It is. It's a very bioavailable calcium. Yeah, and in terms of, your macroalgae, having that bioavailable calcium is going to be really important, just like it is for, your terrestrial plants, right? Having
Yeah,
bioavailable,
maybe
or
more
even
important for them.
animals too. Hmm. And coral skeleton is actually it's a calcium carbonate, but it has an aragonite structure. So using Oolitic Aragonite is actually a pretty sustainable and ethical way to replace your coral skeleton, right? Because you're not sure where the coral skeleton is coming from. Is it coming from live coral and that's being killed? So you want to look at the source there. But with Oolitic Aragonite, it's like a naturally precipitated aragonite, right? That we can use for that. So it's a good sustainable and ethical replacement for it that will serve the same properties, right? So it has that bioavailable calcium because of the high surface area and the high elemental calcium content, which is going to help with the growth of that macroalgae, help with cell walls and the structural components. It's going to provide that pH stability, which is important as well, because of its buffering capacities. So having that pH nice and stable will help with healthy photosynthesis and that nutrient uptake in the macroalgae. Having carbonate ions is important too. So the calcium carbonate can help provide those carbonate ions, which also helps to facilitate photosynthesis, and helping that macroalgae grow and produce energy. It can help reduce that nutrient overload as well. So by maintaining that stable and balanced environment, the aragonite will reduce those fluctuations in nutrient levels that can cause nuisance algae blooms. Kind of like how we use it in nutrient remediation for, harmful algae blooms and in the environment. Kind of, does similarly there. And it can help with biological filtration too, right? Because if it's microporosity and high surface area, it provides a great home for a lot of beneficial bacterial communities, which can help break down that organic waste and reduce those levels of harmful ammonia and nitrates.
I think you just mentioned three things that I really want to make sure, especially the coral keepers, put in their mind. So you may not know this, maybe you do, but the crazy reef keepers do all kinds of stuff to keep their pH at 8.3. Like they're drilling holes in their walls to run tubing to bring in outside air. They're putting plants all over the place trying to take up carbon dioxide. We are actually putting in kalkwasser into our tank, which has a pH of around 11, multiple times a day, like gallons of this at times. So I just wanted to make sure that our reef keepers, I see Alyson on, she's one of our reef keepers, and she has a beautiful reef tank. So you mentioned the buffering capacity of the aragonite. Can you just repeat that again slowly so that everybody can catch on to that?
Yeah, sure. So aragonite will help to buffer the water and maintain a stable pH, typically around 8 to 8.4, which is ideal for, for those types of for marine aquariums or for, cichlid aquariums, right? Where you need that little bit of alkalinity. So that the aragonite will slowly dissolve and help to maintain that pH and buffer it and maintain it and keep it stable, so you don't have to add as many additional chemicals, et cetera, to buffer.
So I think that's like a really special thing to catch on to. I don't know if you can see, I have a big stand right here, and I'm getting ready to put together. I'm actually moving my tank, and I'm going to replace all the sand with the Oolitic Aragonite. And I'm hoping that it's going to reduce some of the chemicals I'm having to dose into my tank every day to keep the pH at 8.3.
Yes, it should.
I should have written down the other 3 points that I thought were really important that you said. Oh, I know. You said the microporosity. That's something else that reef keepers and aquarium keepers in particular really care about, because if we look at this image, you can see there's a whole lot of space there versus this image. And so what you're saying is it provides extra space for bacteria to grow, correct?
Yes, yeah. So having that high microporosity and high surface there provides, provides more space essentially, for beneficial bacterial colonies and microbial communities to thrive and grow and help to break down that organic waste and reduce any harmful ammonia or nitrates. So that healthier environment will help other things like coral and macroalgae to thrive and grow. Your typical calcareous sands will have that other morphology, right, which isn't going to have as high of a surface area. It's not going to have as much space. It's not going to have that microporosity to house all of those microbial communities. So you won't have those benefits with the typical calcareous sands as you would with the aragonite, which has that nice high surface area.
Yeah, I know a lot of us have extra rock in our sump and other areas to provide more bacterial space for the microbiome. If the sand can provide a better microbiome for that is it's just a benefit. Like, there's nothing bad about this sand. The more I learn about it, I'm like, it's so cool. I didn't know I'd be so excited about sand. Steven said, don't those crazy reef keepers use pressurized CO2 strictly for dissolving calcite aragonite? I feel like I've seen that. And yes, they do. It is called a calcium reactor. So that's something else that it's done to try and get more of this into the water for the coral. You actually take dead coral and put it in a container, and you run CO2. CO2 reduces the pH through it, so that way all the calcium carbonate dissolves from the coral and is released back into the water. And so it causes an issue, though, because it can dip the pH a little in your tank. So you're having to do extra things to increase the pH back up to around 8.3 because you want it at 8.3 for photosynthesis. The coral slows down growing if you start dipping below that. All right, so which things have we not hit yet? Here's our spikes. So this is an image of what the Oolitic Aragonite from Aquanatural from Calcean looks like compared to what you would see in a different type of store-bought. I guess, like, would you find this on the beach? Like, is this mine?
So that's actually, we went to a pet store, a local pet store, and we bought a bag of sand, not Pisces brand sand that was labeled as Bahamas Oolite. And we looked at it in our lab, and these are pictures we took. It was not Oolitic Aragonite. So as a word of, caution, you'll want to, look into your source and make sure that you are sourcing real Oolitic Aragonite. We looked at it, first at a surface level, right? So if you look at those two images and you look at the image on the left, you'll notice and see those round spherical grains all throughout it, right? That's the Oolitic Aragonite. Versus if you look at the image on the right, you'll notice everything's kind of angular. And then we put it under our microscope, the same material, put it under our microscope, and you'll definitely see the ooids or the Oolitic Aragonite and the individual grains there that are, spherical and egg-shaped compared to the image on the right where everything's looking a bit, angular. You can even see, I think in the bottom left corner there's like it almost looks like a little piece of glass that's like a quartz material that's in there. So that's going to be more characteristic of like a calcareous sand that you would buy, not Bahamas Oolite. It's not going to be Oolitic Aragonite from the Bahamas. And so what we also did too is there's a unique test that you can do called a Fagles test. And the Fagles test is an old way of seeing how, is it aragonite or is it what other polymorph of calcium carbonate is it? So we did that. It's a mixture of various chemicals, and you expose the material to those chemicals. And if it's aragonite, it will turn black. If it's not aragonite, and say it's calcite or baterite, which are the other polymorphs of calcium carbonate, it won't turn black.
Is that something people can do at home?
You would have to source the correct ingredients and that sort of thing. So it's a little, if you order all the ingredients online, you have to go through like one of the scientific websites to order
Fisher or something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I suspect we have some people who'd be interested in doing that.
Yeah. They absolutely can. I would say the easiest way though is to look for the oolitic grains.
Yeah, and lots of people on here have microscopes too, so this is super easy.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're calling something oolitic, which means it has a spherical egg type shape, and this is what you're sending people, like it's just not matching the definition. And this is just a telltale sign.
It may be a calcareous sand, but it's not Oolitic Aragonite.
Right. So it's just a different
You're
form.
going to miss out on those. Yeah.
Yes, you're not going to have very unlikely to have this kind of structure if you look at it under, what kind of microscope does that kind of structure analysis?
An SEM.
SEM. Mm-hmm. Structural electron microscope, is that what that stands for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I doubt any of you guys are going to have that at home.
No, you got to send off for that.
So one of the things that you talked about just a second ago was Bahamas oolitic sand. Can you find this anywhere else in the world?
So you can find Oolitic Aragonite in various locations in the world. You can find it in like Shark Bay, Australia. You can find it in the Persian Gulf. You can even find some ooids in the deserts in Utah when they were underwater. It formed there. That's as well. Cool. But it's all going to be a little different. So it's going to, because it's really dependent on your water chemistry, right? So it's going to have different purities, different impurities. And that sort of thing in the water that it precipitates in. So for us, it's geographically optimal, and it creates a very high purity calcium carbonate or Oolitic Aragonite in the Bahamas. So,
but this is not something you're finding everywhere.
No, you're not finding it everywhere. No.
I thought that was really interesting when we talked the other day about that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is just you showing like how people. A lot of other companies might collect sand versus how y'all collect sand, right?
Yeah, so this is a a comparison of, harvesting. We call it harvesting, right? Because oolitic aragonite naturally precipitates and it's continuously renewing. Like we've done ASTM D6866 testing, which is for biogenic content or looking at the renewable carbon content of the material and found and, clarified and determined that it is renewable. There's peer-reviewed literature showing that it's renewable material as well. And we've even conducted environmental product declarations on all of our products as well, which looks, an environmental product declaration quantifies the full impacts and the footprint of your product. So it'll look at it from the formation of the aragonite all the way through to, its harvesting, through to its processing. So if there's we dry screen the material. We also mill it for some various industries, turn it into a powder. And that's what goes into like bioplastics or paints and coatings, that sort of thing. So we have a footprint for every single one of those products, even based down to its packaging, if it's in a 50-pound bag or a super sack, and the impacts based on that. And that's all included within our EPD or environmental product declaration, which is third-party verified and registered as well.
So what does that mean?
Took that peer-reviewed literature and we took it a step further and and also developed some of our own studies there too. And we determined that all of our products are climate positive. So that means that the aragonite is actually removing more carbon from the atmosphere than our harvesting and processing is emitting, which is truly unique. And that's important because when you look at this slide here, this is a comparative of what we do. We don't erect any permanent structures. The area simply looks like an underwater desert where we're harvesting material. Tidal movements will move material back into areas we've harvested. It doesn't even look like we've been there, versus a typical calcium carbonate mine. Your typical calcium carbonate mine is going to change your local geological ground conditions. You see all that like gray stone there. That gray stone isn't even calcium carbonate. They've got to blast through that just to get to the calcium carbonate rock. So that's a carbon intensive process. Then they've got to break that down into smaller processable units, and then further crush it to what they need as well. So you're going to see some deforestation, habitat loss. These quarries aren't coming back. They're not continuously precipitating. This is going to be a fossil-based source of calcium carbonate versus the aragonite, which is a renewable and a renewable source of calcium carbonate.
About how much do you think y'all are collecting a year?
We just harvest on demand.
Okay.
As we need it.
How much is being deposited every year? Do y'all know that?
Yeah, it's about 14 to 120 million short tons per year.
That's a lot. You told me like how much space it covers. Like what's the acreage or what was the size of where this deposits?
Sorry,
I didn't have this in our question.
Our harvesting area our harvesting area is under a lease, and so that's about 500 square miles.
But that's only like a small portion of where this happens, right?
It forms throughout the Bahamas. Yeah, it forms throughout the Bahamas. There's various areas within the Bahamas that it forms.
And so every year, like, it's what is it, dinoflagellate? What did you say that it was?
The cyanobacteria.
Cyanobacteria. I was like, not dino, cyanobacteria. So they're actually taking CO2, like the bad stuff in the atmosphere that we don't want there, that's like impacting climate change. They're using the CO2 to make sand, basically, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cyanobacteria. They're going to save the world.
Yeah, it's very unique. Yeah. Yeah. On the Bahamas banks, throughout the various areas throughout the Bahamas where it forms, in the reserves, there's about 50 to 100 billion short tons of material, renewing at the 14 to 120 million short tons a year.
That's crazy.
And then just in the lease area alone, where we harvest, there's about 3 to 4 billion short tons, renewing at around 2 million short tons per year. So
3 to 4 billion tons? Is that what you're saying, or short tons?
Yeah,
I don't know what
short tons. Yeah.
What does that mean? I've not heard that term before.
So you have short tons and you have metric tons.
Oh, so okay, got it. Okay.
There's 2,000 pounds to a short ton.
2,000 pounds to a short ton. I'm gonna have to write down these numbers. And there's millions renewing every year. That's crazy. It's such a. It almost seems like a good thing to be collecting the sand so that way. It gives it more to deposit to, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
exactly. There's so much of it. They've recorded like sand waterfalls where it, because the Bahamas is like a tabletop, right? And then there's the deep water, the drop off. So they've seen it, like a sand waterfall
oh,
flowing
that's the
into the
term
deep water.
whitings, right?
Yeah, so the whitings are the precipitation events. So when those cyanobacteria are doing these precipitation events, the water actually turns a milky color during
Is
those
that what's
events.
going on right here in this picture?
Well, that's just a picture of
It's just a
the
picture.
yeah. But you can view it on satellite imagery. It looks like wispy white clouds on the water,
Oh, that's
like
so
somebody's
cool.
painted wispy white clouds on the water, and those
How
are actually whitings events.
how often do the whitings events happen?
They happen continuously, but they peak in April and October.
Oh, that's really cool.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, the researchers initially thought that they saw it on the satellite imagery, couldn't figure out what it was, and so they thought it was fish stirring up the bottom. Um, and that's where the term whitings comes from. They thought it was fish, stirring up the bottom, and then so they went out there and did a study that probably wouldn't be approved today. But they threw piscicide or like fish insecticide in the middle of a whiting to see what
oh,
turned up, see
yeah,
what
that
fish were
would never
causing
be
it.
allowed now.
Yeah, when nothing turned up, they had to look at other hypotheses there, and that's when they realized it was actually a precipitation event of calcium carbonate.
Oh, that's so fascinating. I feel like this is one of those things that one day should be on a bucket list. Like, I want to go see a whitings event. Um, so here's a list of some of the studies that you guys have had done.
Mhm.
Is there anything else that you want to add? We're at our 30-minute mark, so I try and keep it as close to 30 minutes as possible.
Well, I think we touched on, we've got the LCA and our EPD is really the most valuable. We have end users who will take that EPD footprint. So if they have a formula that that they're working with various ingredients, they can take an EPD from each, take that carbon footprint, plug it in, and then it will give them their end product's carbon footprint. So, our material is great for helping to reduce that carbon footprint in an end product. We also, have our Green Circle Bio-Based certification, which is based on a full audit of those ASTM D686 results for renewable content. And then recently we were awarded the EcoVadis Gold Award for sustainability, which is excellent as well. That's a full audit of our company and systems, everything from business ethics to sustainable procurement to environmental. They look at every aspect of our company. So it was we scored in the top 5% of evaluated companies. So we're really proud of that.
Yeah, that's definitely something to be proud of. I know anybody who's into this hobby has to care about sustainability and the environment. So when you know that the companies that you're buying from care also and are getting this kind of accolades for it, that means a lot to me.
Thank you.
Greek Boy said he'll volunteer to make a trip down to the Bahamas this week to check on that sand.
Yeah. You're not the first one that's told me that.
So
I'm here in the Bahamas now. I'm located here,
I'm
so.
so jealous. I think I need to make a work trip. So here's the list of references. So that way, if there's anything that she said that you guys want to double check on, hopefully you guys found this interesting, considering you want it to be 3 hours instead of 30 minutes. We're in our right community, and I'm hoping that this is going to be useful for other people in the future when they're asking us about this type of sand, that we can just shoot them this video and hopefully it answers most of the questions. If not, put them in the comments below and I will shoot them off to Alyson so that she can provide any additional insight.
Yeah, happy to.
All right, if there's nothing else, then I am going to be done with you guys on YouTube. Thank you, Alyson.
All right, thank you so much.